Hey everybody, welcome to an experiment today. I am Adam Gilbert Cole. I'm the Adult Services Librarian at William Jeanes Memorial Library. Today we are hosting an event called Hot Cakes and Hot Reads, and thanks to our library patron John Lewis for the inspiration. Thanks, John. I'm going to make one of my favorite pancake recipes, and I'm also going to talk about some books that I have read recently. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments on the video, and I will get to them after I'm done here. In the meantime, let's get started. Today, we are going to make, I think it's probably my favorite pancake recipe. It is a lemon ricotta pancake. It's one of those recipes that, sort of demonstrated that the internet can do anything for you these days. My parents came back from a trip to Minneapolis, where they visited my sister, and they were raving about these lemon ricotta pancakes that they had in a restaurant there. And I thought, what is this, like 2013, 2014? I bet there's a recipe out there for it. So I went looking and I found it. I will post the recipe in the comments and on the event page on our website, jeaneslibrary.org, after we're done here. But it is delicious. It's got everything that you could want in a pancake, and then some. And then I'm going to talk about books. So some of the books that I recommend you will find available in our electronic book collection, Overdrive, or available through the Libby app. Both of those things you can access through our website, jeaneslibrary.org. Or some of them I only have in hard copy, so put it on your to-read list, and then you can get it when the library reopens again. We're all making do as best we can these days, and so hopefully the pancakes bring you a little bit of joy. Alright, so I've got all my ingredients sorted out ahead of time. I will show them to you as we go. Normally, I do this as I go, and everything is a little sloppy, but we're going to get started. So, the first thing that we do here is take a cup and a quarter of, just 1 cup, 1 cup of whole milk, 5 tablespoons of unsalted butter, almost a whole stick, and then heat it up. I normally do it in a saucepan because it lets me stir it and sort of keep an eye on it. I did it in the microwave this time so that I could have it ready for you. It gets heated, and then we mix it with something else in just a minute. But, okay, so I'm going to start adding the dry ingredients together, too. We have a cup and a quarter of all-purpose flour. We have, I gotta read my list here, sorry everybody, a teaspoon and a half of baking powder, and then a half teaspoon of fine salt. Not kosher salt, but fine salt. In this case, I ground up a little bit of pink salt, and we're gonna throw it in. While I am whisking these together, let me grab my whisk. I will tell you about this book that is sitting here on the griddle, which we're going to use to make the pancakes in a little bit. This is a short story collection called Vampires in the Lemon Grove by Karen Russell. Lemon Grove, I sort of picked it because it's thematic, but also I read it a few years ago. It's not her most recent release, but it is a collection of short stories. And I think maybe a lot of us are feeling that attention deficit these days. The short story can be a remedy for that, where you can just sort of dip into something for a little bit and then come back out. I would think that, for me, I'm under the stay-at-home order. I have a little bit of extra time to read, and I'm still not making good use of it. And so this could be a nice way to just sort of get the literary feet wet. Anyway, so it's a short story collection. She is a brilliant writer. She writes like nobody else. The sentences aren't super long, super convoluted, but they're always a sort of surprise. And the topics of these short stories are a little fantastical. So, in the title story, it literally stars two vampires who are navigating their afterlife relationship. There are two vampires, the only two vampires they know, and they have found a way to satisfy their lust for blood by actually eating lemons in an Italian lemon grove. And that sounds fantastic, but it actually is much more about the what you feel, how you process, how you react to a person when you're in a relationship that spans for decades. I mean, in this case, literal, like 50, 60 years. The characters are sort of inhuman, but very human at the same time. The short stories are all over the place. One of them is about women in a silk factory who actually turn into silkworm creatures and then take over the factory and own the means of their own production. My favorite story in the whole collection is called Proving Up, and it's set in the American West in the frontier times. And it centers around a single pane of glass that settlers have to share between their houses to prove that they are that they have a claim on the land when the claims inspector comes around. It ends up being much more a horror story about what living in that kind of isolated wilderness can be. It's pretty chilling. I love it. Again, the way she writes is just out of this world. All right, so that's Vampires in the Lemon Grove by Karen Russell. That's the book, everybody, if you can see it. We'll talk about the next book in a second, but let's move on with our recipe. All right, so we have our dry ingredients sifted together in the bowl. I'm going to move on to the next step. So we have 3 large egg yolks separated from the whites, which we're going to use in a minute. The yolks go into a bowl with a tablespoon of sugar. And then, my favorite part of the recipe is a tablespoon of finely packed lemon zest. This gives it the lemon flavor. You don't actually use any lemon juice or anything. The lemon zest gives it a really zippy, sort of fresh taste. And I am going to get my fingers dirty here. All right, so we are going to now whisk those together gently. And this next step is sort of delicate. If your buttermilk mixture is up to temperature, you can't just pour it into this right away because it will curdle the eggs. Not the eggs, the milk with the lemon. So you sort of have to temper the eggs a little bit. Just pouring it in a bit at a time here to get them mixed together. Once you've got a little bit mixed in, you can just keep adding. Right. So there is that step. I don't know if you can see, but it's a little steamy coming off of here. I know the lighting's not great in my kitchen. Sorry, everybody. All right. So that is our next step. And let's talk about our next book. A non-fiction book called The Food Explorer, The True Adventures of the Globe-Trotting Botanist Who Transformed What America Eats by Daniel Stone. Another sort of thematic pick for our recipe today. All right, so like the subtitle says, it's the story of David Fairchild. He was born during the Civil War. His passion for plants and for agriculture led him to begin his early life, once he grew up, sort of globetrotting. He had kind of wacky ideas about how to bring crops to America. American farming at that time was sort of dominated by the very basic staples. and he loved the variety of plants in the world, and so he sort of hooked up with an eccentric millionaire. They traveled throughout Asia. Their plans kind of collapsed, and he came back and started working in a government agency that sent people all over the globe to collect plant cuttings, seeds, saplings, anything that they could to expand the variety of agriculture in our country. The book is full of wild people. My favorite character in the book is Frank Meyer, who, by all accounts, seemed literally unable to stay in one place for more than a week at a time. He's a Dutchman, and he comes to America. His early childhood is dominated by him just his fascination with plants. He seems to relate more to plants than he does to people. And so he becomes an agent in Daniel Fairchild's government agency. He gets sent all over the world to collect these samples, and he spends a lot of his time in Asia, where he's found during World War I times, and in China at that point there's a lot. This is around when the Republic of China is first finding its feet. It's founded in 1912. He's there in 1718. And he's just a fascinating character. He's full of this grit and adventure, but also some kind of bottomless despair at the same time. I don't know. Just a fascinating man. The whole story is wild and just something that you don't think about when you think about American history. It actually it has villains. Who oppose the bringing in of agriculture by our protagonist. And it's just a really good read. The writing itself is fantastic. So again, The Food Explorer: The Adventures of the Globe-Trotting Botanist Who Transformed What America Eats, by Daniel Stone. All right, so we've got our tempered eggs. We've got our dry ingredients. We are going to add the dry ingredients with a rubber spatula to our wet ingredients. Fold them in gently. Don't make a giant splooshy mess, just like I did. And stir them up. Like I said, fold them in gently. Part of the process of making pancakes is not getting them too mixed together. I'm doing it in the in my Pyrex dish here because it makes it easy for me to pour later onto the griddle if I want to do that. I don't often do this. I don't plan ahead this way very well, but that's that. All right. So we've got the dry ingredients folded in slowly but surely. Our next step, and the one that usually takes the most time for me because I have a terrible hand mixer, is those egg whites that I talked about. You whip them until they form soft peaks. And so you can see, hopefully you can see here that I've got egg whites in my bowl. This gives the pancakes a really delicate fluff. And as you're whipping the pancakes, or the egg whites, when you're about halfway through, you add a tablespoon of sugar and a half teaspoon of that same salt that that fine salt. Okay, so we've got these mixed together. While I fold these in, I'm going to talk about another book. It is maybe time for people to delve into series of books also. We are now under our stay-at-home order in the southeast corner of Pennsylvania until June 4th. And so maybe you want something that's going to last you a while here. I listened to these books on audio through Libby, but you can find them pretty much wherever. The narrator, the person who does the reading for these books, was fantastic. And the first in the series is called Oversea Under Stone by Susan Cooper. The series is The Dark is Rising. It is actually a series for, I would say, not quite young adults, like middle grade fiction, but like the best middle grade fiction, it is way, way, way more than that. So the first book, Oversea Under Stone, stars 3 siblings, Barney, Simon, and Jane, who are visiting, they're vacationing during the summer in Wales with their great uncle, who they call Gummery, because his name is Mary. So great Uncle Mary, they call him Gummery. And during their adventures, they come to find out that great Uncle Gummery might not actually be their great uncle. He's a really great, lovely person. Something is sort of odd about him, and he seems to be opposing some kind of forces of evil that are outlooking in this tiny Welsh town. They're out looking for something. They don't know what it is. The characters themselves are really, really well observed. I love the dynamic that the siblings have with each other. And that's not even my favorite book in the whole series. My favorite book in the whole series is actually number 2, which is called The Dark is Rising, and stars Will Stanton, who wakes up on his 11th birthday to discover that, I've got these blended together pretty well now, I don't want the eggs to collapse, to discover that he is no ordinary boy. He is actually what is called an Ancient One, and he is part of the forces of light who are opposed to the dark, and he's the last Ancient One to come into his power before the final cycle of light versus dark is fought. Again, it sounds like children's literature. You can hear my cat sneezing in the background, everybody. Hi, Moscow. It sounds like children's literature, but like the best children's literature, it is beautifully observed, and it has a real sense of itself. The writing is beautiful. All of the characters, Will Stanton especially, how do you write a story from the point of view of a boy who is also not a boy, who is an ancient being? She does it magnificently, and I love it. All right, so that is Oversea Under Stone by Susan Cooper, the start of the series, The Dark is Rising. I would recommend all of them. And if you can get it on audio, do it. Like I said, the narrator is really great. He has this beautiful English accent, and eventually he has to read all the Welsh towns. It's amazing. Okay, so we've got the egg whites folded into our batter. At this point, we take this last step, the ricotta. Sarah, I know I told you I was going to make my own ricotta last night, which is very easy, everyone. It sounds like it's something that would take a lot of work, but it is not. But I couldn't because my wife made a whole bunch of coffee cakes last night, and she used up the heavy cream, and I could not make my own ricotta. So luckily I had some in the fridge that was prepackaged. Okay, so that is that step. I'm going to start turning on the griddle now to get it up to temperature, because in a minute, after I talk about this next book, we're going to start making pancakes. This is another step where you don't want to get everything blended together too much. Little pockets of ricotta in the pancakes are a nice surprise on the mouth as you're eating it. And get it mixed together here. All right. So those are the 3 books that I wanted to recommend today. I do have one that my wife wanted to recommend, and this is a recent publication. This is Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. I have not read it yet, but I do have it on my bookshelf to read. You can see it's sort of a short book, and so it might be one that you can dip into lovely here. So Jacqueline Woodson is one of those writers that I have never heard a bad thing about. She writes amazing young adult books, and this one I think is sort of one of those books that has appeal to both young adults and adults, although I think it's categorized as adult fiction. It is a story set in New York City, and it's one of those intergenerational stories, not spanning over a really long period of time, but the story opens with Melody's 16-year birthday party. She's sort of coming of age. She comes out to the music of Prince. And the story then revolves around who Melody is, who her parents are, her grandparents. Like I said, it's one of those intergenerational stories, and it really illustrates, my wife says it really illustrates the way that a parent's choices affect the next generation. So, I see, Sarah, that John says this was really good, so excellent. Hannah my wife Hannah listened to it on audiobook and really loved it. She wanted to make sure that I recommended it today because she saw it sitting on the bookshelf. All right, so the griddle is coming up to temperature. And as soon as it comes up to temperature, I'm going to start making this. So the lemon ricotta pancakes are really flexible with what you can serve on them. My favorite is when it's fresh fruit season. I like to just put some raspberries on it. You can also cook up a fruit compote so that you can, do that. It does fine with maple syrup. I admit that I love them with just butter. I don't often put things on them just because the lemon flavor is so beautiful, so full in your mouth. There it is. All right, so griddle's coming up to temperature. I'm gonna pour it out. You can make them as big or as small as you want. Because I'm often making for my family, I usually make them a little smaller so that my boys don't waste any pancake. And here we go. So this is the process of making lemon ricotta pancakes. You can make them in a frying pan. If you do that, I would say probably do a little butter in the frying pan too. I sometimes do it on my griddle here just to give it a little extra something. I'll talk about another book that I wasn't planning on talking about, but I am reading a book that, you're never sure. This is not one of those books that I think I would recommend to a lot of people, even though I love most of his other books, but there is a book that Jeff Vandermeer published very recently called Dead Astronauts. He wrote a series of books a couple years ago. Actually, I was probably back in 2012, now that I think about it. That started with Annihilation, that was made into a movie starring Natalie Portman. I love those books. This one is called Dead Astronauts, and I was talking to somebody the other day who said that Jeff Vandermeer describes it as a reading experience, and I think that's probably a good way of putting it. It is a story set in, I would say, near or far future, I don't know, but it centers around three people who are trying to sort out timelines. They keep traveling back and forth in time. Look at these beautiful pancakes. I don't know if you guys can see them. Hold on a second. They get so lovely and beautiful. You can smell the lemon zest coming off of them as you cook them. All right, let's see if this will stand back up. Anyway, it's set in the same universe as another of his books called Born. It is very experimental in its writing. It feels like it's very heady. The sentence structure is very strange sometimes. You're not always sure which character is talking when. Some of the characters have duplicates of themselves. It's science fiction at its weirdest. He is a writer who writes in the genre that he calls the new weird. A lot of other people, there are a few other authors China Mieville, and those are the two off the top of my head that I can think of. Anyway, so I'm enjoying it. Enjoying it might not be the right word for that, but it is a great reading experience, and as I plow through, it's a nice counterpoint to some of the other stuff that I'm reading right now, which is nonfiction that I am, just trying to plow my way through sometimes. All right, everybody, I've got some beautiful pancakes here, and I did not get a plate to put them on, so... That's lemon ricotta pancakes, everybody. Like I said before, I will post the recipe on the event page on jeanslibrary.org, and I'll link to it in the comments here on the event. I'm gonna keep making pancakes, and in a minute I will jump into the comments to see if I can't answer some questions for you. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you in 2 weeks. We're doing it again on the 23rd. And next time, I'm going to make some oatmeal pancakes with Scottish oatmeal. All right. See you later.